For one Missouri resident, the dream of retiring to her family's homestead is getting a little fuzzy.
The owner is fighting what she describes as property theft from an unlikely suspect. KOMU's Jeremy Maskell shows us what's lighting controversy on the land in this Target 8 investigation.
You know what's much bigger?
Janet Beck walks today where she stood as a child, playing on her uncle's farm.
When we were kids, we just thought this was heaven out here.
The Morrow homestead, as it's called, has been in Beck's family for more than 150 years. She planned to use this property when she retires.
They just demolished it as if they owned this land.
Beck says the property is unusable because power poles she claims were built in 2006 dissect the property into 4 small pieces right down the middle.
Without an easement, without even contacting me.
Rivers Electric Cooperative, the company responsible for these poles on Beck's property, repeatedly denied requests for an on-camera interview. They did speak to me off-camera, however, saying they're operating well within their legal rights. In this letter from Three Rivers to Beck, the co-op's manager of operations says all lines on the Morrow homestead have been there since 1949. It says the company has an easement signed by George Morrow, Beck's uncle.
You want to say, oh, well, is it that big of a deal? And then you realize, my goodness, yes, it's a very big deal.
Beck says there's no way her uncle signed an easement.
My father said, George never did that much. But what he did do, he wrote down.
After requesting to see the original easement, Beck was mailed these copies. She says Three Rivers has not allowed her to see the original. The easement was never recorded at Cole County Courthouse and has no notary seal. But Three Rivers says that was common practice for many easements and argues they are still enforceable. The catch is, Beck says there was no easement in the first place.
It contradicted all public and private records of our homestead. And I immediately dug up Uncle George's 1949 diary.
Beck then mailed the easement copies to 2 handwriting analysts. While neither returned a final decision without seeing the original document, both said their preliminary conclusion, based on the copies, were that George Morrow did not sign the easements himself.
Stanley was here.
And on the day in question?
Rainy all day. It has froze, as it still is snowing now, late. The lights went off about 2 o'clock, came back about 6 o'clock. Nobody has been here today.
Three Rivers, in this letter to Beck last February, assured her the documents were not fraudulent. The next paragraph then argues even without the signed easement, by having poles on the property for more than 10 years, it grants Three Rivers a prescriptive easement to use her property. Beck says the same problem happened in 1987, immediately after the hilltop was deeded from Morrow to Beck. Well, no easements were recorded on the title insurance. She says Three Rivers built new poles on the property. After contacting the co-op, she says Three Rivers took down the poles and never provided an easement.
They apologized fully and removed their poles immediately.
Three Rivers said it has no record of that ever taking place, only that there is some blacked out paperwork from that year that could be from Beck's property. Beck says she's in the dark. It just doesn't add up. She explained what she sees as the only difference between 87 and 06 when she says the poles were built again.
Uncle George was alive. It's the only difference between then and 20 years later.
Three Rivers says these poles themselves are new, but says the lines and poles in almost exactly the same location have been here for more than 6 decades. Otherwise, they ask, how would George Morrow have received electricity? But these photos, Beck says, are from 1999, help paint a different picture. Video taken by KOMU News from what Beck says is the same spot clearly shows poles and lines apparently absent in 1999. After examining them in our interview, Three Rivers challenged the authenticity of the photographs. Beck has contacted Attorney General Jay Nixon and county sheriffs and prosecutors, all of which have responded saying there is no criminal action they can pursue, leaving Beck with property she says is worth nothing but the memories.
Believe me, we were not stumbling over guy wires anywhere.
Beck says unless she gets the lines removed, her dream of retiring to the family homestead will be off the grid indefinitely. Three Rivers told me they have offered to meet Beck and her attorney at the Russellville property, an offer she has declined. Beck told me the expenses involved in a civil battle over her family's land are simply too much to bear. But Beck says she won't give up until she can build the house she wants on her property again. Jim and Lauren.